In this sense, ethical finance shares the principles of social economy, which is like putting like not only the criteria of economic merit, but also to see each of the economic activities, so each of the financial movements, if they have like also a social and an environmental impact in their action, not only the economical return. So once this has been decided collectively, to make sure this is working like this, because not all the shareholders are workers of the bank, they use like very transparent methods to guarantee or to show that the money is being used for what the collectively, like the shareholder base decided that it was going to be used for. So basically, they published all the credits they give out, like their assets. You can check like where the money is going to and how much the amount that is going to each credit and stuff. And not only this information is available, but also it's made. Let the bank make sure that this information it's reachable and it's not hidden somewhere in the website, no. And also showing one of other values of the cooperative world, the cooperative banks and ethical banks are aware of how they belong to an ecosystem, and that they are not financial institutions that are outside of and above the society, and they withhold a lot of power. They are aware that they are enablers for communities to work, but there are also other actors in that communities, like schools or universities or public authorities or like businesses that enable a society and a community to thrive, no? So basically, it's not a company that just wants to make profit for making profit, but just like wants to be an enabler of something bigger. So one of these banks, the one that we were going to talk about today, it's Fiare Banca Etica. It's part of the group Banca Etica, which is like a transnational cooperative that is working both in Italy and in Spain. It has more than 50,000 shareholders, and yeah, it has 22 branches in Italy and 1 branch in Spain. So you can see that it's not like quite the same the sizes. It's a lot stronger in Italy, let's say. But I think it's important to mention here that the bank was not born in Italy and then created like another branch in Spain because they wanted to expand and they were doing a market research and they were like, oh, where can we open a new branch? No, these were 2 different projects that came up from different citizen movements that had similar values. So it started first in Italy, but then at some point, actually in the Basque Country where Unai and I come from, there was a group of people who went through that process that I explained before, like people that were like, we don't want our money to be used for what banks are using it for. So we want to create our own financial institution. And in that process of becoming like an independent bank and a financial institution, they came across with Banca Etica, who was already an established bank, and they kind of helped each other, and they helped the group in Spain to become to have a banking license and to become a bank. So they kind of share the cooperative group, but it's important to mention that it's like citizens movement that created this financial institution, because it's like the most interesting part about the cooperative banks in the ethical banks, not the financial activity itself, but they were created from the intentions of people of doing something different with their money. A bit of like how Banca Etica works. It has shareholders, members, and it's a cooperative bank. Each person has 1 vote, so everything is voted in the General Assembly each year. There's an international General Assembly in 2 different cities, one in Spain, one in Italy. And yeah, last year, for example, we had elections for electing the new president and these kind of things that, of course, don't happen in every bank. And also the shareholders of the bank don't receive dividends. So all the benefits of the cooperative are reinvested in the bank. The shareholders don't expect some money to be paid off at the end of the year. And then they have this structure that it's called the GIT, that says 82 GIT, which is like a super interesting form of participation of the bank, because it's not only a cooperative that has the general assembly and that has these legal processes. It's also a bank that ensures that there's the correct ways and the correct tools to promote the participation of the shareholders of the bank inside of the life of the bank. So one of the characteristics that this bank has is that they are territorial groups. I think there are around 17 or 19 in Spain, and the rest are in Italy. And they are organized by territories, and they are shareholders that are volunteers that have knowledge about what's going on in the territory, and they report back to the bank, and the other way around. Also, they take the information of the bank or the possibilities that the bank could, things that they could do or they could invest in, and they act as transmitters of this message to the local territories. No, so it's a very interesting thing because it makes a national bank operating at national level aware of all the specialities that are going on in each of the territories, and in that way you can do credit and you can do economic activity in a way that it's like centered to the needs of the each community. No, it's not going to be the same needs of a person in the south of Spain, in a small town in Sevilla, because the agricultural system, like the agricultural products, are different to the ones in Galicia, for example, in the north of Spain, or in a town and a city. So ethical finance and this kind of finance is more about like what it's needed in each of the contexts, no, and how that's beneficial for like the group that is there and the environment in general. Banca Ética has basically like a criteria of excluding sectors that they don't finance. So weapons, of course, intense farming, tobacco industry, gambling or speculation, and activities linked to fossil fuel extraction. And instead, there's in their mission to actively support cooperation and social innovation, environmental protection, culture, organic farming. Well, things that are in general, like we would call them positive, no? In general way. Some concrete examples about this, like there's this microfinance organization that gives microfinance, microcredits to women in Ecuador, Honduras, Benin, and Senegal, and through Banca Ética, they get savings from ethical investors and they place it there. They also finance activities that are saving humans in the Mediterranean, or enterprises that grant access to people with disadvantages in the labor market or ecological agriculture. Well, things like this. These are like concrete examples of things that are being financed in Spain. And a tool to do that, that it's very specific about this bank. Also, other ethical banks in Europe use it, but it's quite unique from Banca Ética, is that to go together with the economical assessment that every bank does when you go to the office to ask for a credit, they're going to see the viability of that project, if that you're going to be able to return the money or not. They also do a socio-environmental evaluation, like a socio-environmental assessment. So basically, is this project going to have any positive impact in your community? Is this project going to have any positive impact in your workers? Like, are you going to pay well to the people involved in this company? Are you using, I don't know, like materials from proximity? Like, you don't have to comply with all the criteria. So it has to be a project that tackles all the problems, but it does have to show that it's a project or a company that is meant not only for generating private profits, but also to have an impact in the community. No? So you have to pass both assessments to be able to have a credit or from the bank.
Hola.
Hola. I don't see anyone, so. And, yeah, basically you can say that. Hola.
Yeah, it's okay. Yeah, it was Bren. I muted her. It's fine.
Can I? Vale, I keep going. Vale, sorry. Es que I don't see people, so. Vale. Basically, to say that Banca Etica, it's a group, so it's not only a bank, it's a group of, you have here in the left, Banca Etica, the Cooperative in Italy, the Cooperative in Spain, that are the same part, both are banks. Then you have an investment fund that it's also investing. Cresut, it's like the manager of the microfinance projects. And then they both have two financial institutions, one in Italy, one in Spain, that are taking care of more like financial literacy or cultural projects or things that are not like suitable for a bank, but part of what Banca Etica does is very political, and it's also educational, and it's also sharing, like changing vision on how money or finance should be used. So there's a very like important part that the fundaciones, the foundations do to complement not only the banking part. And also part of the ecosystem, it's belonging to, for Bancatica, it's belonging to wider networks that work at international and European level. Like, for example, JBV is the Global Alliance of Banking for Values, for banking on values, that it gathers like sustainable and social banks from all around the world. And then also the FABEA is the European Federation of Ethical and Alternative Banks and Financiers. It's actually where I'm working now. And in FEBEA gathers different financial institutions from across Europe that share the ethical approach that I was describing at the beginning. So Banca Etica is member of FEBEA, and also like other financial institutions, not only banks, also it can be credit cooperatives or other type of financial actors that promote this vision of ethical finance as a whole. And EMN, something similar, but for microfinance as well. And in summary, what I always like to say, it's something that for me is very, very, I don't know, it's like the key point for everything. And it's basically that for Banca Etica and for ethical banks, making profits and making money, and out of making money, it's not a goal in itself. It's, of course, something you need to do to keep the cooperative alive. You need to be financially stable. You need to make some profit, but it's not a goal. Money is just like seen as a tool of development and an enabler to do something bigger or to do something else. The mission of these kind of banks is to be enablers of thriving communities, to build better like societies and a better ecosystem for everyone. And money is just a way of getting there, because there's a lot of people already doing things, and money, it's an enabler for this. So yeah, that's like the most important thing, I would say. And that's it. That's the end of my presentation. And now we can discuss about anything you want. Also, I was discussing before with Yanaya about this. A ver, espera. Stop sharing. Yeah. About that, the fact that I work in Banca Etica, it also gives me, in FEBEA, sorry, it gives me a bit of the overview of also what's happening in Europe, in other countries, in other contexts. So if you're also curious about that, we could also talk about that. And yeah, I hope it was clear, more or less. I don't know, now you also are a shareholder of Banca Etica, so if you want to add anything.
Oh, I can just say that what you said is true. So I'm part of this JIT, like this local territory. So yeah.
And thank you, Maria, for sharing. I have a lot of questions and or thoughts. Curious to hear more, but I would, yeah. First, I would love to like leave space for in case anybody else any thoughts or questions they would like to share before I ramble.
Just quickly from my side, also, yeah, really liked the presentation. Thanks for doing it, and yeah, like happy to see the board of cooperative finance and FIADE like being shared here in Bread and so on. My quick question that wasn't so quick in the end, is to know more about FEBEA, because
Mhm.
I think it'd be quite interesting to know how the coordination of like cooperative banks and other entities is done at an European level, but that may be a bit too long. So maybe we could go over to Josh's points. Not sure, but that basically throwing the point here.
I'm also interested in FEVEA.
I can, bueno, you prefer that I go,
Yeah.
Josh, or you prefer to?
Tell us more about FIVEA.
Okay, sure. That's easy because it's my job. So, yeah, okay. So basically, I told you all this thing about the ethical banks and cooperative banks, and the reality is that it's a very small reality. No, it's not the mainstream. It's not main banks are not. They don't have this either shareholder base or these thought process behind them. So when there's a cooperative bank or an ethically driven bank in a specific context, they usually feel very alone. So like kind of in the early 2000s, there were like some leaders from different banks across Europe that kind of gathered, and they were like, okay, we cannot stand alone, so we need to unite because we have shared values of what economy should look like, how financial systems should look like, what banks should be doing, and we need to kind of unite to help each other out. So for the first 15 years or so, it was just like a small club of people that gathered with similar ideas. And in the last 6 to 7 years, it has professionalized itself a little bit more with a bigger team based in Brussels. Basically, FEBEA now gathers like 34 financial members. Not all of them are financial institutions, most of them, yes. But for example, one of the foundations that I mentioned before, it's also a member, and they don't do financial activity itself, but they promote this vision of ethical finance. And in FEBEA, we consider that that's equally important, or at least it's also important in this, because it's not only banking or it's not only financial activity, it's more of a political statement, basically, to be an ethically driven financial entity. So it has 34 members across different countries of Europe: Spain, Italy, France, Germany, Denmark, Norway, Switzerland, Romania, Greece, Croatia, and Malta. I'm probably leaving some out. But there's some specific examples of what ethical banking is in each of the contexts. And as I said before, each of them are different to each other, but they share these values that I mentioned at the beginning as well. So basically, we have a team of 7 people in Brussels. We're based in Brussels because we consider the main missions of the organization to be 2 or 3 if you count them. But one is internal, and it's reinforcing the members, and it's like having a space where members can exchange with each other, can learn from each other, can understand what problems they're having in Ireland or in Greece, and see if they can share solutions, and also to give services like capacity building and to be kind of like strengthening the ecosystem of what exists now. And the other role of FEBEA, it's towards the outside, and it's more towards not to the general public, but a bit specific on the European institutions. That's why it's based in Brussels, and it's a bit kind of like trying to use either tools that are already existing from the European Commission that could go to ethical banks so they can do their job better, basically through programs of guarantees or money that the European Investment Bank can lend them, or also, but in a very not so efficient way, because this world is very huge, try to influence in the policies of the European Commission and the European Parliament when it's about the sustainable taxonomy that was out, or the banking regulation, or housing. Now it's a topic that we're working on. So things that are of interest for members, we try to knock at the door of the European institutions and be like, hey, have you thought about when you regulate about the banking system, understanding that there's this kind of banks and that they're actually doing things that are more aligned with what you preach, that because the European Union is always about like, oh yeah, sustainability, oh yeah, and things like this, no? But then what they do is a bit different. So yeah, in a very summary way, FBA does these both ways activities internally and then externally towards the policymakers. But then we do a bit of everything. This is clever.
Nice. That's quite nice. Thanks.
Yeah, if you have specific questions also about FBA, it's also fine. I will share maybe.
In the meantime, I can answer this question by Keen if what's how we became shareholders of the bank. I mean, I don't know.
Oh,
I don't
of
remember.
FBA?
Yeah, I guess so, right?
Of FBA now is very easy. Before you had to take 3 years and I don't know. Now it just you can just go to the website of the bank and there you can open an account. And basically, first I think you open an account, and after you have an account, you buy shares of the bank. And once you buy the shares, you become a shareholder. And
Yeah,
I think the minimum are like 300 or something like this.
that's true.
No?
Yeah. Yeah, I was a user for a long time and then became a member like 2 years ago or so. And yeah. But I don't know if we do it generally in the Basque country. I don't know. I don't know the data about how many users are members also. Or half of them more or less, right? I think. But
Mm.
and there was this question also about crypto. So it's like if there are conversations happening or what's like if they use it like well, it says only the cooperative movement, but I guess it's like the related to finance or the banking sector. Feel free to unmute that,
Yeah.
by the way.
This I don't know. I cannot answer you. I don't know if I'm not sure if I don't know because it's not happening, this conversation, so I haven't heard of it. Or maybe it's happening, but at very if it's happening at the banks level, so the ethical banks in Europe or the cooperative banks in Europe, it hasn't come as a shared practice or as a shared concern, at least, because this is when it reaches us, when there's shared issues or problems or topics the members want to tackle. It hasn't happened. I cannot talk for all the banks in Europe, cooperative banks in Europe, and I don't know why it's not happening. So I don't know if it's because of lack of resources or lack of technologies. If it's something that I don't know. I cannot answer your question very well.
I can imagine it's maybe a mix of a few things. Probably that Europe has a more like it's international but also standardized, and you have the same currency. So at least one of the things that crypto is really good at is being able to do finance across borders without having to deal with the issues that come with that. So I imagine if you're hyper focused on local things, then the easiest thing for maybe for you to deal with is just whatever is there locally already, instead of trying to engineer something that if the capital is already there locally, you don't need to try to get international capital or something like that. But one of the questions that I'm curious is how these ethical banks and cooperative banks typically get kickstarted. So like do those banks themselves have to get loans from other ethical banks in order to to grow and have enough reserve, and the amount of money that you need to start a bank is not small, I guess. So I wonder how that typically happens. I mean, I don't know how much Unai spoke to you about bread cooperative, but we're kind of a lot of the things that we do is, at least the way that I've tried to think about it, is heavily inspired from the cooperative banking, movement, and it's a different context, of course, but always trying to think about like how do we kickstart this to have enough capital to where we can do more of these bank-like services. But yeah, curious about the kickstarting.
That's a great question. That's a super great question, because actually after the financial crisis in 2008, the norms that the European Union passed to kind of prevent that from happening again became so strict that it's basically not impossible, but super, 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 super hard to get new banking licenses and to create new banks, especially like cooperative banks. But how they become in the past, it's basically getting capital from shareholders that were willing to commit to something that it was a bit like a fantasy still. So there's a lot of educational process before it involved, because you need to get people commit their money to something that it's not real yet. And actually, Fiare's case is very interesting, because I don't know if you heard of it, but there was this citizen movement in Bilbao, in the Basque Country, and they started, and this was the proposal, an ethical bank that is for the people, that it's not speculating, that it's cares about the society and the environment. So they, with this same speech, they convinced super extreme anarchists and communists, and in the other side they also convinced non groups, and the church also, some more political priests, they chipped in, and so everyone from that spectrum was joining in for the project. And actually it didn't happen until Banca Etica kind of came across, and they offered their own banking license, because they saw that even if they reached the capital, there were a lot of other requirements that they could not do. However, usually they first become credit cooperatives. There are examples of credit cooperatives in Spain. We have COP 57, but also in Belgium there's 2 credit cooperatives. So they first they start acting as financial institutions, but are not regulated as banks, so they cannot offer certain services as a bank. They can do credit, they can do savings, they can do investments, but they cannot do have a banking account or a credit card or things like this. And it's not backed by the Central European Bank, so it doesn't have this security. But still, they can. FEBEA, we have many members that are not banks but are cooperatives. So usually this is a first step, but we have some members that are in this step that they just want to be credit cooperatives, but some of them wish to be bigger banks. And so far, right now, it's a very, very, very hard thing to do. There's this example of a French bank that last year just got the banking license and became an independent bank, La Nef, it's called La Nef. And it was a very successful case and unique. But it's true that they were already working as a financial cooperative under the supervision of a different bank in France, and it's not started from scratch. So I would say creating a bank, it's very difficult. You have to acquire the people and the capital, but also maybe a first easier, more achievable step would be having a credit cooperative. I hope it answered your question.
Yes, thank you. Yeah, I never really understood the difference between a credit cooperative and a cooperative bank. I think I just never looked deeply enough, but that was helpful. You can, so this is like a middle. You can the first step is credit cooperative, and then a bank. So there's kind of this middle, quote unquote. I don't know if it's the right term, but yeah.
Yeah, it's basically, it doesn't have to be a midterm. For some, it's the end goal, not to have a credit cooperative. The thing is, when you're a bank, you're regulated under the Central European Bank. So there's a lot of things that you have to comply with for security matters, basically, and like the saving accounts that like the accounts that people have there are secure, guaranteed. Like you need to comply with a lot of things because also you have certain services that you can offer and that you have like certain guarantees from the Central European Bank. But when you're a credit cooperative, basically you don't comply with any of those. You're just like a service cooperative, but those services are financial. So you get the capital from the people that they chip in, like they put the money, they become shareholders, and then the cooperative lends with that money that they have, and they're not regulated under the European Central Bank or whatever. So it's not guaranteed and stuff, but of course, when it's a cooperative that it's like ethically driven, it has its own ways of proving that it's not going to be speculating in the market with savings of the people and stuff. So that's the main difference. One, it's regulated as a bank and has to comply with it, but at the same time, you have the services that you can have as a bank. And the other one is a bit more free, more independent, but there's some certain services you cannot give to your shareholders.
Okay, that makes sense. A credit cooperative then can make loans, but it's maybe more akin to maybe a private loan in the sense that it's not backed, or I guess insured. Like the it doesn't have that I forget the name in Europe, but like the FDIC insurance in the US. But
it's it works like it gives credit and it works under the like how the cooperative was established and what the shareholders want. And basically what you don't get when you are a cooperative, like a financial cooperative, you can invest, you can get credit from it, but if you're a shareholder, you can only basically save your money there. You cannot have an account where you don't have places to withdraw money. You don't have like you cannot do transfers. You cannot do like basic service banking services. You just have your money there stored as a savings account, and then the cooperative lends with that money and with that capital.
right, but you can earn an interest, I guess, by being a shareholder.
You can, yeah. That's defined in each of the cooperatives. Some probably have like a high interest, some less high interest, depending on what is it for. But usually, of course, you get some remuneration for your shares.
Right. Okay, cool. This interesting. I haven't shared this with anyone outside of like one of the team, some of the project leads of Red Co-op, but one of the things that we're considering to do is giving out a 100K loan to one of the new members for building solar panels. So I think this is interesting. I don't know if you guys do loans outside of like Banca Etica, outside of your local place, because it'll be in Portugal. But yeah, just putting that out there as a little teaser for people.
Where in Portugal?
Abeja. Okay.
Okay.
You know where TDF is, Luis?
Yeah, it's in Alentejo. Not sure. Yeah. In the south of Portugal.
There are a few other questions in the chat. Matt, feel free to unmute if you want. He's asking if the investments are made by ethical banks are entirely localized or if it is broader.
Or is it broader, like, do the banks invest in the opportunities discovered by other banks in Febia? That's it. So there's a bit of everything in sense of like there's very different banks in Febia, like size-wise. So the small banks usually just finance their own local things because or national things because that's already enough. And there's some other bigger banks that are willing to invest further. But the thing is, like, they don't usually invest in like specific small project or activities. Maybe they invest in a bank that is ethical, but they can lend them to that territory. I don't know if I'm explaining myself right. Like, maybe a German bank wouldn't come to Spain and finance energy community or cooperative housing, but they could invest in Fiare Banca Etica, and then Fiare could use that money to lend to the ethical finance world. And this is something we try to foster in FBA. Like, instead of buying, like, from banks, sometimes like they buy state bonds or things like this with the liquidity they have. So instead of using money for that, we try to foster exchange between them. But there are a lot of European laws that make this apparently a nightmare that I'm not aware of. But it's not that easy, I think. Investing in one another is something that it's a bit complicated for compliance reasons. I think this was the question, no?
I think so. Matt, feel free otherwise. Yeah. And there was this question by that.
Yep, no, I was just going to say that was perfect answer. Yeah, ignoring how complicated laws could get. That's actually a really cool way of doing it.
Mhm.
But yeah, that answers it. Thanks.
There's a given the price fiat in the U.S. global reserve currency is ready to encounter expected critically interesting role in finance in the future. Yeah, I'm as I was saying to Unai before, a bit unaware of the potential of crypto, I think. But I think if it's playing an important role in the mainstream finance world, I think it's interesting for ethical banks to also consider, no, like the potential of it.
Yeah, definitely get a call. Get Unai in a room with the head of Banca Etica in Bilbao.
Yeah, my first thought is investments. Like, I know it's not local; it's really the opposite of localized, but stuff like Ethic Hub and Helios. So it's like specifically funding green energy projects. And kind of just, I don't know if the tokenization would make things even just more complicated from a legal perspective. But in terms of like, yeah, why would we be dipping into Ethereum, into the blockchain world for investments? It's just like, you're specifically trying to make ethical stuff, but there are definitely things that are quote unquote highly ethical crypto investments, I think.
Yeah, and I've been reading some stuff around the European central bank's plans around digitizing the euro, and Ethereum seems to be like the preference so far, at least from what I've read. If they were to use a public blockchain.
Just sharing what Matt was mentioning.
Ethic Hub.
And then I think Azos Finance is also kind of an interesting one, but that's really getting into convoluted in terms of, you know, the purpose of kind of but everybody can hear the baby babbling. He's an Maxi too, don't worry.
Sounds very cute.
Yeah, curious to know if anyone else have has comments or questions, um, especially those who didn't ask yet. You're welcome to unmute anytime.
If not, if there's ever the conversation in FEB about like crypto and blockchain, I know where to ask. No, I can always come here. Now that I have Discord.
Yes.
Cool. I wonder, maybe one of the things I've been wondering, if are there any attempts, like what are the, because yeah, I don't have any accounts with any ethical banks, so I don't really know for sure, but do they ever look into kind of like new banking platforms? Like, their position or thoughts on that? I mean, right now, it feels like Revolut, for example, in Spain is dominating, it sounds like, or it's like growing quite a lot. Are there any initiatives around kind of neo banking, I guess, if that make if you know, like kind of
Yeah.
digitized finance, fintech stuff?
Yeah. It's a very fair question. And as a young user, it's something we've been asking to Fiare ourselves as well. The normal response I usually get is like, these neobanks there are huge companies that invest like their biggest product. It's basically an app. So it's a bit kind of like, we wish to be there, but it's something that we're very far from. Like Fiare, until like 5 years ago, didn't have an app like for the phone. Or my dad told me like he was a member of the bank for I think 10 years until they had a credit card. So it's a different rhythm, you know what I mean? Like it's something that it takes longer because the banks are way smaller than the mainstream banks, and they don't have that much capital to invest in something like this, because if they were investing in this, they wouldn't be investing it somewhere else. But I don't know, it's not that, I think it's like not, oh, we're against that, but a bit more like, it wouldn't be realistic to think that we will be in a Revolut way, like a kind of app in a few years, you know. I wish though.
Makes sense. Do you guys have like cards where you're able to like put on your phones or something like that, like into Apple Pay or Google Wallet or whatever it's called?
I think with VR you cannot, no, Unai?
I'm not a user
I
of
haven't
such
tried.
things. I don't know.
Una is purely physical.
Cash.
Well,
Just sharing quickly.
they,
Mm,
I
uh-oh.
I
Yeah, just
was
sharing
just saying,
quick.
if they want,
Please, sorry.
if I'm just saying, if they want a cooperative to help them build an app, let them let us know.
Okay.
Go for
Yeah,
this.
Do you
thank
work
you.
in one of those?
Well, we build similar infrastructure, I guess. Yeah, we build we develop applications. Yes.
Luis.
Nice.
So,
Yeah, sorry for always like talking at the same time as other people. Yeah, I just wanted to share that nicely. The project I'm part of here in Barcelona, we are constituting, in the process of constituting it as a cooperative. And if I'm not mistaken, I'm pretty much 99% sure that, like, in the process, we're getting support from the local cooperative Ateneo. And in the process, we would be opening an account in Fiare. So that's quite cool. And then we'll be getting, I think, like a, yeah, I don't know, like a corporate Fiare cooperative banking card or something. Then we can try out like adding to the phone to pay. But that, and yeah, really nice to. Oh, thanks for sharing the link of the project. And if at any point there's anything interesting going on in Barcelona, or if you're ever around, feel free to let us know. We'd be happy to connect. We're connected here to the entity that is doing the coordination of cooperative banks in Catalonia. So that's quite cool. We've been like, yeah, proposing some experimentation. So we'll be, yeah, hopefully testing things out here locally. And yeah, that a nice, yeah, again, nice presentation, and really nice to know more, I think, especially on yeah, how the articulation of cooperative banks works at an European level, especially like, yeah, with like policy making and so on, because that's quite important. So nice presentation and work.
Yeah, feel free to explore a bit like on FBA's website or something, and then if you, I don't know, you see something that you work with or that it's interesting for you, drop me an email. I mean, no problem for that.
Cool, nice. Thanks.
Cool. So I don't know if there are more questions, more comments. If not, we can close it for today. I'm very happy to see Wes here. The last Wesley, the last person who joined, he comes from Kenya and he's part of a very nice network of cooperatives there. Very cool to see you, Wes. Must be late for you though.
Go on.
It's around 12 here. 12 a.m.
Okay, so yeah, let's call it a day then. Thanks a lot,
Perfect.
Maria. Super nice having you.
Thank you for inviting me.
Gracias.
And I'll see you around with Jóvenes probably.
Yes.
Las manos.
Thank
Okay,
you.
bye guys. Thank you very much.
Good night. See you.
I mean, ciao.
Bye bye.